Hey yo, what up? It's your boy. I know I'm super late to this video. You've probably already seen a million of these already, but as the title says, I have just finished watching the highly anticipated, I guess, Netflix One Piece live action season. Again, apologies if this is super late. I wanted to get this video out immediately after I watched it, but unfortunately, I was just over in Europe for 2.5 weeks with the Trash Taste Boys because we just finished our Trash Taste Europe tour, which went absolutely amazing, by the way. Big thank you to everyone who did show up to that. But today is not about that. Today is about the One Piece Netflix live action. I've made a couple of videos already on this channel watching the 2 trailers about it, and I said I was going to make a video talking about my thoughts on it, my review on it. So here it is. What did I think about the Netflix One Piece live action? Well, it was actually really good. I call it the first season because from the sounds of it, a second season is probably going to be coming out, considering the fact that this was actually a pretty big success for the Netflix guys, not just for the numbers that it pulled, but also for, I guess, the commercial and critical response that this series got, considering it is a Western production One Piece anime live action, which doesn't have the greatest track record for those of you who know anything about that, and I would know, considering the fact that I have watched pretty much every single anime live action that has ever been created. So naturally, since I'm already this far down the rabbit hole, I decided to give this one a watch. 8 episodes, about an hour each in terms of episode length, covering all the way up to basically Arlong Park. I'm going to go into little spoiler territory here, in case you have never seen, watched, or read One Piece before. If you haven't, then I don't know why you're watching this video at all. So if you don't want to get spoiled on the first however many chapters or anime episodes Arlong Park goes up to, then I would suggest you go and watch those first, read those first. Hey, even watch the One Piece live action first, in case you don't want to get spoiled. But if you don't care about spoilers or you've already seen it, then hey, you're in the right place. So let's just jump right into it. For a Western adaptation, for a Western production, which apparently the production value for this was like freaking insane. Apparently it was like $100 million plus from what I saw from some sources, which is absolutely crazy to think about. It was actually really good, and you know, considering the fact the source material being a shonen manga, not just a shonen manga, but the biggest shonen manga ever created, held the biggest manga series, anime series ever created, with an absolute die-hard, hardcore fan base, which, you know, I'm not necessarily in that camp necessarily. I'm absolutely a One Piece fan. I've freaking loved One Piece ever since I started reading it. But considering the die-hard fan base, which recently has turned incredibly toxic, in my opinion, there was definitely a lot of pressure for this live action to succeed, and you know, I'm happy to say, in my opinion, I think it actually succeeded in the best way that it could have, despite all the odds. The acting at first was a little bit, I guess, you know, uncanny in a lot of ways, considering the fact that Oda's characters are definitely a lot more anime-fied, a lot more manga-fied than a lot of shonen protagonists, especially Luffy being, you know, such an eccentric, off-the-walls type of character. I thought at first it would have been really difficult to portray in a live-action setting, but the actor who played Luffy did a really good job. You know, again, he didn't go too overboard with it, but you could definitely feel the Luffy's presence inside of this actor. Like, he really played Luffy in probably the best way that it could have been played. He wasn't too over the top, he wasn't too like erratic, he wasn't too like balls to the walls, batshit insane that Luffy is, even right from the beginning of One Piece. But you know, you could definitely feel that vibe in it for sure. So considering the fact that we don't actually get that far into the One Piece story, we don't get to see all of the Straw Hat crew, we basically go all the way up to, again, Arlong Park, which for those of you who have read One Piece, you would know that it covers up to Sanji. So you get Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji as the 5 Straw Hat crew members, which I think for one was a good part to cover, especially in this first season, considering the fact that we didn't really know how it was going to pan out, and I guess the production didn't really know how it was going to pan out. So before going into things like the Alabaster arc or the Chopper arc especially, I think this was a good place to kind of end it, and it's a really good, I guess, taste test for those who have never watched, never read, didn't know anything about One Piece. Like, I would even go as far as to say that this One Piece live action might honestly be the best thing to show non-One Piece fans if you want to get them into One Piece, because as much as that might be like a blasphemous thing to say, it's really difficult to talk a non-anime fan, a non-manga fan, a non-One Piece fan to start this gargantuan adventure that is One Piece. Like, it's very difficult to go up to someone and being like, hey, there's this show called One Piece that is absolutely incredible world building, incredible storytelling, really emotional at times, just all around good shonen anime manga fun, but the problem is you have to read 100 plus volumes or watch 1,000 plus anime episodes. I think the moment you say the how many episodes or chapters that you have to go through, that is an instant turnoff for a lot of people. Whereas if you show them this live action, you just have to say, hey, there's only 8 episodes. And you get a pretty good understanding of what the world of One Piece has to offer. So I genuinely think I might honestly start using this live action series to recommend to non-manga and anime fans, because again, it's a good taste test. It's not too long. You get a good understanding of the world that is revolving around One Piece, all the important information that you need to start off your journey with One Piece without it necessarily going too far or necessarily being too long-winded. Obviously, with the amount of money that was thrown into this production, the set design is freaking incredible, and I think the one thing that a lot of live action anime do wrong, which I think One Piece live action nailed pretty solidly, was the fashion department in terms of how the characters were dressed. Now, for those of you who have watched or read One Piece, you would know that a lot of the characters dressed pretty weird. There is such a wide, eclectic range of costumes and characters, and the way that they dress and the way that they act and the way that they play out these characters, that it's definitely a bit of a challenge for the costume department to nail. But I think in terms of getting, I guess, the subtleties of the different characters without it looking too much like cosplay was done in a really great way. I mean, for example, look at the Full Metal Alchemist live action. I think the biggest caveat for the Full Metal Alchemist live action that really, I think, dragged it through the dirt, in my opinion, was just the fact that they tried to portray the characters a little bit too similarly, a little bit too faithfully to the original source material, to the point where all the characters just look like they were in cosplay. Now, granted, I'm not saying that the One Piece live action costume department did a 10 out of 10, 100% amazing, perfect job at it, of course, but I think, again, considering the source material that they're working with and how difficult that is to translate to a live action, I think they did pretty all right with it. I mean, I talked about it in the previous videos where I watched the trailer and we saw the first glimpses of a lot of these character designs. I think the, purposeful exclusion of some of the characters' physical characteristics from this live action actually played to its benefits. For example, Usopp in this live action doesn't have his signature long nose, or Sanji doesn't have his signature squiggly eyebrow. And, again, a lot of hardcore One Piece fans will come on camera and be like, oh, they completely ruined this character. Like, Usopp is not the same without his nose. Sanji isn't the same without his eyebrow. But, I think it was a really good, exclusion, again, for this live action, because it wasn't distracting. Like, again, I feel they really tried to make sure that they nailed, I guess, the personality of these characters before 100% being committed to making the characters look exactly the same. Like, they wanted to, I could tell from this live action that even without the nose, that was Usopp. Even without the eyebrow, that was Sanji. And I think that is first of all, a big clap to the directors and the producers and the actors especially for being able to portray these characters in the way that they portrayed them, even with some of the physical traits not being apparent from the get-go. And, what can I say, man? Makinyu playing Zoro, I've seen so many goddamn thirst trap videos on TikTok already of this live action Zoro, and hey, I can't blame them. Live action Zoro looks badass as fuck. I would say probably one of my favorite characters to watch, just because of, again, I mean, I just love Zoro as a character in general, but I think Makinyu did such a fantastic job of kind of showing the more cooler, edgier, subtler, quieter moments of Zoro. Again, without it being overly edgy, without it being overly anime. And again, same thing can be said for Luffy as well. Like, yes, the quirkiness and I guess the off-the-walls nature of Luffy is definitely present through this live-action series, but I think it was done in, again, a very subtle way without it taking away from Luffy's character. Like, that was clearly Luffy. When he's goofy, he's goofy. When he's serious, he is goddamn serious. But I would have to say my favorite character, my favorite portrayal, I think, of any character in this live action has to go to Buggy. I mean, for one, Buggy is an amazing character. I love him in the manga and anime, but this live action portrayal of Buggy, oh my god, this actor fucking nails Buggy to the point where it's like genuinely terrifying to watch, but in the best way possible. Because again, you have to remember, Buggy is a villain, technically speaking. In the lore of One Piece, Buggy is kind of a villain, an antagonist, if you will, that is sometimes cooperative with the Straw Hat crew, as is shown in, this live action, especially around episodes 6 and 7. But just like the first time you see Buggy, and the first time, the Luffy, Zoro, and Nami get captured by Buggy's crew, and they're in that little circus area, and you really get to like see Buggy's character and just how maniacal and deranged and insane of a character he is. I think the portrayal of that was done so goddamn well. And again, like, I couldn't help but think of like a Joker character. Honestly, like Dark Knight Joker style. I think some of that has definitely been played off through this portrayal of Buggy, but done again in a really unique and fun way that is clearly Buggy. Like, there is no denying that is Buggy, and I think this actor did a fantastic job of Buggy's portrayal, and it was definitely one of my favorite performances in this live action, for sure. Now, I'm giving all of these praises, but I'm going to be a little bit picky right here, and I guess, say some of, I guess, the things that maybe could have been done a little bit better, because again, as much as I really enjoyed this live action adaptation, I would say already it is probably in like my top 5 live action anime adaptations for sure. It doesn't come without its faults either. Specifically, the Usopp arc. Again, like, it's not my favorite arc, and Kuro as a villain was okay in my opinion. Definitely not the most interesting villain in early One Piece for sure, but I just felt that the Usopp arc, even though it only went for 2 episodes, episode 3 and 4 specifically, I just felt it was just dragged out a little bit too long in my opinion. Like, I feel Usopp got a lot of screen time in those 2 episodes, and yet Usopp himself didn't really leave a mark during that screen time, which is weird, right? Because considering the fact that this is technically the Usopp arc, Syrup Village is technically the Usopp arc, I just felt that the existence of Usopp in those 2 episodes was really underwhelming in a lot of ways. And again, I feel the relationship between Kaya and Usopp was just dragged out a little bit too much in my opinion. Kaya got way more screen time than Usopp, I think, and left more of an impression for me anyway. And, it's been a while since I've read the original chapters and watched the original episodes of the Syrup Village arc, but I don't remember this being dragged out as much in the manga, personally. I feel like, Oda really wanted to show, I guess, the romantic dynamic between Kaya and Usopp in this arc, and really, like, show off Kuro as a villain. And again, nothing against Kuro. He's a perfectly fine villain for early One Piece, but I just felt like it was just a little bit too dragged out in this live action. And, you know, 2 episodes doesn't sound like much, but considering the entire season is 8 episodes, you know, dedicating a whole quarter of this season to what is essentially like filler, what is essentially filler in this early, you know, season is just, I just felt, again, was just a little bit too dragged out in my opinion. And on the contrary, you know, the whole Baratier arc, where we are first introduced to Sanji, I think was just a little bit too short. I feel like they could have extended out Baratier or even extended out Arlong Park a little bit, you know, instead of giving so much screen time to Kaya and Usopp, in my opinion anyway. I just felt Sanji was kind of like really rushed in. We didn't really have enough time, I guess, to like know Sanji's character before he decides to join the crew to Arlong Park and save everyone. Like, it definitely felt like it was the most shoehorned in, which is a shame because I absolutely freaking love Sanji as a character. The Baratier arc is a great arc in my opinion. Like, Zeph is such a fucking badass character, and I definitely loved the flashback between Zeph and Sanji. I thought that was done really, really well, and definitely it provided that emotional, I guess, baggage to the viewers to really like get to know and feel for not just Sanji but also Zeph as well in a great way considering the short runtime. But again, I just wish we just got to know a little bit more of Sanji. We got to see a little bit more of those connections with Sanji in this live action, because one of the big changes that they made was the fact that Arlong shows up to Baratier, which I'm pretty sure in the original manga did not happen. Which, look, I'm not going to fault the writers or Oda for, you know, making this change or anything, because again, with the limited amount of episodes, they had to introduce Arlong in a quick fashion that would make the transition to Arlong Park a lot smoother and make a lot more sense. So I'm totally fine with this inclusion and everything like that. And again, you know, it's been a while since I've read the manga, watched the anime, so I might not be fully accurate on this. I'm sure One Piece fans will correct me in the comments below, so please go ahead and do that. But Arlong Park was really dope as well. And, you know, Arlong's portrayal, when I watched the trailer, did look a little bit underwhelming at first. You know, I think I called him like a basement dweller from how he dresses in this live action, but the actor who portrayed him definitely made Arlong out to be like an evil motherfucker and a really sinister motherfucker as well. So I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end. But I think one big thing that I just thought was a little bit like weird, I guess, was the conclusion to everything, especially the conclusion to the Arlong fight. It just felt a little bit underwhelming. You know, I get it, it's early One Piece, it didn't have the most like grandiose fights or the most grandiose conclusions or anything, but I felt like the Arlong fight could have been extended a little bit further. You know, I feel like we could have seen some more like close combat, stuff like that. I mean, you know, the outside of Arlong Park, you know, the whole Sanji and Zoro fighting part and the Usopp fighting part was really dope. I really, really like that. But, you know, I guess the fight between Luffy and Arlong just felt a little bit underwhelming in my opinion, a little bit too rushed in my opinion, but maybe that's just me. And I guess one little interesting aspect of this live action, which I think I'm the only one who did this, was the fact that I actually kind of watched this half-half in English and with the Japanese dub as well, because for those of you who don't know, there is actually a Japanese dub for this live action, which was actually dubbed by all of the original voice actors of the anime, which I thought was really, really cool. So I wanted to kind of see how those, I guess, voice actors portrayed their own characters, but this time in a live action settings, and especially during some of the more like emotional moments as well, and the more like epic moments, the moments where we hear some like really iconic lines, for example, like, you know, the part right near the end where, you know, Nami finally snaps and asks Luffy and the Straw Hat crew for their help. Like, that is a really powerful line in the original manga and the original anime, and I wanted to see, I guess, the differences in delivery between the original English actor and the original Japanese voice actor. So I actually watched a lot of scenes kind of twice. I even watched some whole episodes twice, once in Japanese and once in English, just to discern the differences. and you know, all of them were done really well. The original voice actors obviously fucking killed it. The performances were actually, I feel, a lot more toned down than the anime, which I think was a correct choice, because, you know, they're not voice acting for anime, they're voice acting real people, you know, acting these scenes out, right? And obviously, when compared to an anime, the live action actors are going to be performing their asses off, but definitely just in the nature of live action is going to be a lot more toned down in general compared to anime, which has absolutely no limitations in terms of how hype it can get. So I think the fact that these original voice actors kind of slightly toned it down, like, you know, kind of went from a 10 to like a 7 in terms of performance, in terms of intensity, I think was the correct choice, and it definitely made the dub a lot more seamless when watching the live action. So I think that was done really well. But honestly, you know, I'm not going to say here, I'm not going to be like a fucking elitist and being like, oh, you should watch this dub in Japanese or you should watch this dub in English. I think both are acceptable. I think both are fine. I think all the performances were actually done really, really well. And yes, you know, there might be some subtle differences. Sure. You know, it might not be like 100% following the source material or whatever, which is one thing that I know a lot of manga and anime fans are really fucking butthurt with when it comes to live action adaptations. But I think the one thing that you guys need to understand, and for people who are saying that need to understand, is that this is not supposed to be a one-for-one recreation. It is an adaptation, and that is a really key word. It's not going to be exactly the same as the source material. Yes, it is taking a lot of elements from the source material, but obviously they're going to change things up for pacing issues, for limitations, for what live action actors and CGI can do compared to the, again, no limitations that the world of anime has. And I think despite all of those differences, despite all of the changes that were made, I thought it was a really, really solid live action. I mean, hell, I even like shed a tear in one of the scenes. Again, in the scene where like Nami asks Luffy for help, I kind of teared up. Ain't gonna lie, I kind of teared up. I mean, I cried when I read that in the manga and I watched it in the anime, so I was prepared for it, but there was a part of me that was like, I'm not gonna get emotional again, especially with live action actors and everything like that. But hey, you know what? The fact that it managed to get me to shed a tear, even in a scene that I have seen hundreds of times in different languages and in different formats, and I think that's a really big achievement, especially for a live action, especially for a Western production of a show that I think nobody in the world was expecting to be decent or even good. So if I had to give like a numerical score to this live action, I would probably give it like a solid 7 or an 8 out of 10. Again, it's not the most perfect live action I've ever seen, but it honestly doesn't have to be. I think, again, this is a really great step forward for live action anime, and I think this is just going to convince a lot of Western productions that, yes, there is a way to make anime live actions work. There is a way to give it justice to the original source material, and I think One Piece did a fantastic job at that. And again, if there is anyone out there who has never heard of anime, never watched One Piece, never even heard of One Piece, but has always wanted to, or maybe you're someone who really wants to recommend One Piece to people, I would say this is a really good place to start for people, especially since you won't be scaring them away with the 1,000+ chapters and the 100+ volumes. So yeah, you know, considering all of that, we're probably going to get a season 2 of this. Let's be real. And season 2 is where it's going to start to get a little bit dicey. I touched upon this briefly in my previous videos for the trailers, which if you're interested, I've left in the description. But you know, the Chopper is coming up, Robin is coming up, the Alabasta arc is coming up, so you know, this is the point in the One Piece story where it's really gonna start to get a little bit more off the walls in terms of, you know, characters, in terms of power-ups, in terms of just how these characters act and everything. I mean, at the end of the final episode, we got a little bit of a sneak peek of Smoker, who is an amazing character. So suffice it to say, we're going to start to see Smoker as well in this. And I guess, yeah, speaking of Smoker, before I forget, one aspect that I thought was kind of interesting with this live action was the really heavy usage of Vice Admiral Garp, who is a character, for those of you who don't know, who is a vice admiral of the Marines, who is Luffy's grandfather, and, you know, does make an appearance in early One Piece, obviously, but I feel in the live action, he was really heavily featured. And the Marine side of this entire One Piece story was really heavily featured, a lot more than the original manga and anime. And, you know, I saw a lot of opinions about this, you know, being like, oh, you know, the Marines got too much, like, screen time, and they took up too much of the space. I actually really liked this change in the live action, because, again, you kind of get to see, like, the other side of the story. And, you know, the Marines, and, you know, General Garp and, like, Kobe and, like, all these, like, Marine characters, they're not necessarily, like, obsolete or unimportant in the grander story of One Piece. Like, they definitely are an important part of the One Piece story and the One Piece world. And I think the heavy usage of Garp and the heavy usage of the Marines was actually a really, in my opinion, really great and clever way to really accentuate the world building of One Piece and the world of One Piece, especially with the limited amount of time that the live action had, because that is one of the strongest elements of One Piece, is the world building. Like, the world building in One Piece is some of the finest out there in shonen manga, some of the finest in manga in general. And the fact that, you know, Oda decided to really heavily feature the Marines and heavily feature Garp, and I guess the relationship between Garp and Luffy, or the Straw Hat crew, I guess, in this short runtime, was a really great, quick, easy to understand way for people to really get into the world of One Piece, because that is what creates some of the most hardcore fans of One Piece, and that's what makes One Piece one of the most popular manga ever created. So I genuinely liked Garp's inclusion in all of this, and all of his, like, I guess, shenanigans and interactions that he had with all sorts of different characters, you know, some of which he never had any interactions with at all. I think it was a really fresh side of the One Piece world that we got to see. And yeah, I really freaking enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this live action if you have been skeptical about it. And yeah, season 2 is going to be really interesting, depending on when that comes out. And I genuinely hope that at the end of the day, you know, Netflix or any other Western live action producers decide to look at One Piece in a positive way, you know, and to try not to abuse it, because, you know, we have a couple of new upcoming anime live actions coming out, even just on Netflix in the next couple of years, which I'm definitely going to be watching. I'm definitely going to be making a video on, like this one, on this channel. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe. But yeah, there are a couple of live actions out there that are in the works and that I'm genuinely scared for, genuinely afraid for, because some of them are based on some of my favorite manga and anime of all time. So let's hope that this One Piece live action is a correct step in the right direction for the future of live action anime. But that is my review. Those are my thoughts on the One Piece live action. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smack my face right here. Subscribe to the channel. Let's keep making big channel number go bigger. Over here next to my head is a couple more videos you can check out if you enjoyed this one. Links to my social media, as well as my Patreon to support me directly, and my clothing brand, nonsense.jp. Check it out. Links in the description. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.